Dr. Giugliano, can you place the AIM-HIGH study in historical context?
Certainly. AIM-HIGH was a study with niacin in patients with known coronary artery disease and atherogenic dyslipidemia. And it was a very important study because, frankly, it was long overdue. Although niacin has been available for over 5 decades, the initial endpoint study was performed in the late 1960s when Lyndon Johnson was president. And things were very different, not only in the U.S. and in the world, but also in the practice of medicine, where aspirin and beta blockers, although available, weren't widely used. We didn't have many of the proven therapies now available to us, like statins and ACE inhibitors and thienopyridines and use of coronary intervention and devices and so forth. So that initial study with niacin in the late 1960s, the Coronary Drug Project, did show promising reductions in cardiovascular endpoints, but the world has changed enormously in over 40 years. And so AIM-HIGH took niacin into the modern practice of medicine and asked the question, on a background of statin therapy in patients with fairly well-controlled LDLs, around 70 or so on average, on a statin, is there any clinical benefit of adding niacin?
So they really were aiming high.
They were aiming high. Unfortunately, they didn't reach the mark. The AIM-HIGH trial was stopped early by the Independent Data Safety Monitoring Board because there were really no differences in the primary endpoint, and even if they had completed the study, they got about 70% of the way through the events, it was very unlikely they were going to show benefit. In fact, the trial was stopped for futility. And there was one negative signal within the trial, and that was a numeric increase in the number of ischemic strokes in patients on niacin. It was a small number of events, and so we're not really sure whether this was a true cause and effect. But nonetheless, there wasn't a lot of promising information coming out of those results, and so I think the Data Safety Monitoring Board appropriately stopped that trial before it completed.
So with the availability of all these other modern agents now, is it time to retire niacin?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, there is another important ongoing trial in a different patient population, in patients who have had an acute coronary syndrome. It's a much larger study, over 25,000 patients that have all been enrolled are now in the follow-up phase. That trial is called HPS-2 Thrive. And while I don't think I'll be prescribing a niacin for the types of patients who are enrolled in the AIM-HIGH trial, one wonders about its role in higher risk patients or in patients with recent acute coronary syndrome. So I'm not sure it's time to retire niacin, but maybe it's time to start planning for retirement, particularly if this second trial is also neutral or negative.